Hello, everybody. I am here again. My name is Oakwalker. We are Earth Medicine for the Soul. This is our podcast where we discuss a bunch of philosophical, items and agendas and topics related to our shamanic paths if we move forward through our lives. And we're really enjoying this. So I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Stronghorse right now because he's got an idea and I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Oakwalker.
Mhm.
Yeah, this sort of been bubbling up in my consciousness over the past couple of days, and really felt like it's an interesting topic, and it's something we need to maybe address right now uh, from our standpoint of knowledge and knowing.
Mhm.
As an introductory portion of this thing, I think I'd like to say that the thing about if about a shamanic path, if it's worth its salt, you get introduced into multiple dimensions. You experience multiple dimensions. You become comfortable in other dimensions.
Mhm.
You look forward to going into other dimensions.
Mhm.
And what that does, it broadens your perspective dramatically.
Yeah,
I
oh,
mean,
yeah.
dramatically. And one of the primary aspects that broaden is you begin to see the difference between cause and symptom. You particularly if you're involved in healing, you start seeing how there's a vast difference of knowledge and knowing between symptom and cause.
Uh-huh.
And that changes your perspective on the world dramatically,
Mhm.
because you're not just watching things on a surface level, you're looking for things that are happening energetically,
Yeah.
because that's your key. And you understand by going into these other dimensions and experiencing these other dimensions in whatever context you do that,
Mhm.
that that how important it is to be able to grasp onto what is available in those other dimensions and see from a cause perspective things that most people wouldn't pay attention to.
Yes.
So one of the things that lately there's been a whole lot of discussion on the internet and social media and stuff about how crazy everything is,
Mhm.
and all the chaos and all this and that, and that's true. That's true. There's been other times, I think, in our histories here where it's been a lot crazier, but the massive degree of communication and information, and the just the onslaught of data that's put out there now is just like people are constantly getting bombarded with all kinds of crazy stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, if you let it get to you, it can just make you nuts. And I think we're seeing a lot of people go nuts as a result of that. So I want to address that
Mhm.
from the perspective of a shamanic understanding of cause versus symptom.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I
So
can't wait to talk about this. There's so much going on there.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I think we got maybe two or three podcasts involved in this, but
Yep, it's
um,
big.
I want to approach this from the standpoint that I think that there are two major competing forces going on right now, and they're clashing and competing with one another. And this competition has been going on for hundreds of thousands of years, probably even way before we were a planet. Um, but because of what people are calling the Great Shift, or this time of transition, these two forces are coming together and they're butting heads in on this planet. And the reason for that is that um, there's a battle for the soul of the human right now, and because we are we call ourselves or the earth medicine for the soul. I think it's important to talk about this to get that information out so that people can perhaps look at what's going on from a different perspective like you and I do. Because I think it really, as we discussed before coming on air, there's a certain piece here that if you allow yourself to embrace that piece and not get involved in all of the symptoms that are going on and with all this flack that's flying around right now with disinformation and information and all of the crazy stuff that's been being thrown out there to try to create chaos, it'll solve a whole lot of internal conflicts with the people. So the two forces that I think are battling right now is you got one force that is really sort of dealing with, can man or can the soul of the human have an intimate, palatable, close, direct relationship with God or the Creator? And I'm going to call that this side. Or is it necessary for us to go through other avenues of approaches to achieve that? So, you could call this the light versus the dark, or good versus evil, or believer versus non-believer, however you want to label that. There's thousands of labels out there that help us try to come or cope with this internal conflict, or what I would call maybe the fracture of the consciousness within the human being. And so, I think this battle is really coming to the surface right now on this planet. And I think that's really the crux of what all of us are experiencing in whatever context we're experiencing it. Because there's obviously the forces that have been in charge, have been dominant in this on the planet here for, like, I don't know what, maybe 2,000 years, give or take a few thousand. Is this, you got to come through us. You got to come through this avenue. You got to come through this particular teacher or this group or
Uh-huh.
this belief system or blah, blah, blah. And now this thing about, hey, wait a minute, maybe I could do this without all those filters. Maybe I could come into a direct relationship with the Creator, and maybe that's what I need to be exploring. And so I think that this group doesn't want to let go of control. They are absolutely fearless in their desire to hold on to control, because they actually, I think, fear letting go because they don't know what that means. And then you've got this other group who are starting to raise their consciousness, that are saying, you know what, I've had enough of that, and I think there's a better way. And I think I'm capable of allowing my own spirit and my own soul to grow and to blossom, to expand into a new dynamic that will serve us on a greater level. And so these forces are battling one another within the context of the human consciousness. And the if you start reading, I think as people are experienced within a shamanic path, it's pretty clear which group we belong to. Because we've experienced multiple dimensions, so we understand the ease within which we can belong to this group. And we don't labor under the burdens of the crux of trying to hold on to another particular type of group or teacher or this or that. We both went through this section of teaching and being taught how to access multiple dimensions, or how to step into a shamanic path. But the end of the day, any good teacher is like, hey, you need to become this part. Or like my teacher used to say, this is the pipe. Here's how you treat it. But at some point, you have to become the pipe.
Mhm.
So, I think that's what all of us are looking at and experiencing. And, all the craziness that's going on in the world right now are all of these forces that are trying to hold on to. You could call it patriarchy, you call it matriarchy. There's 1,000 labels that you can lay on it, but the reality is it's a different change of channel in terms of how we relate personally to God.
Yes.
What do you think?
What do I think?
Where would you like to start with that?
Oh, holy shit. Um, God, should I? Well, okay, let me start this from the top. I am a very, very fortunate person because I've had this life that has been an endless search for the root cause. Somehow, in both my electronic and industrial career and in my training as an herbalist, the root cause of a thing has always been what we've been looking for when you're trying to fix a process in a company that isn't working. You notice the symptoms going on all along the line, but you're always trying to get to the root cause, which is usually something systemic, right? Those things normally got fixed by, um, it could have been, splitting a division or a department into two functions so that they could handle things, anything that was a basic reorganization. And that would have been the root cause that we were looking for. And it's the same thing in herbalism. In herbalism, we don't treat the symptoms like allopathic doctors do. We're not looking to reduce your symptoms and hope to God you'll heal. What we're looking for in herbalism is the nutritious food that's going to feed the base system that's gotten itself out of balance. Now, here's the caveat. If you are out of balance for too long, now you kind of need Western medicine because they're pretty good at coming in and, excising that bad organ, which is no longer savable, and things have just gone too far. And they can use those astonishingly powerful chemical methods to just knock stuff out. And
Right,
so there's going to have to be a coming together of those two paradigms. But the difficulty is in all of those things is that causation and correlation are not the same thing. And as we go through the tremendously difficult process of identifying what's wrong, we're looking at a lot of correlation. I'm reminded of this famous uh, internet meme that goes around, and there's this cat sitting on this humongous automobile car park awning, and the awning is dented, and there's a cat sitting right in the middle of the dent, and it just says correlation is not causation. So just the fact that the cat is sitting here in the dent doesn't mean that the cat dented the awning, right? Cat
right,
is clearly
right,
not capable of denting the awning. So, what we have in this, what you're calling the battle for the soul, which I'm going to need to get into in a minute, is the people who are in control love to gaslight using correlation, lots and lots of correlation. The guy who shot the right-wing influencer used a bullet from Turkey. It said TRN on the back of it, right? They said, "Oh, he must have been a trans shooter, right? Because it says TRN." Well, TRN is the name of the Turkish company that made the bullet. So there again, correlation is not causation.
right.
Um, and there is a battle going on. The question I have is, and there is a battle for the human soul. Those of us who have chosen to come in this incarnation as human are operating within the constraints of this project that's going on that is humanity, and how is humanity going to integrate itself onto a planetary environment, or might I say, reintegrate itself into the planetary environment that it's on without committing suicide on itself. The whole species is at risk right now because of the way we are ignoring what's important in our lives and in ourselves and in our soul, and that soul's connection with the Creator as it is. And without that connection, that battle for the soul that we're talking about is at risk of ending the human species in a chaotic end note. And the long-term consequences of that regarding it means that those of us who are still in that unfinished state of development, that infancy of soul development, no longer have the human experience, which is good, really good for a whole lot of stuff, like accountability and behavioral learning the consequences of our decisions and our actions and whether or not we choose love. Sorry about the pen. That's annoying. So that's the battle. I know that the soul, my soul, is an eternal ray of sunshine that came from the Creator. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. I don't think my soul is in any danger, but I do think that there's a serious danger in setting back its development by a lot of lifespans, whether those are human lifespans or not, by releasing and supporting chaos into this planet. That's, I think, what's happening here is that if we fail at this mission of bringing humanity from this level where we're at right now into that multidimensional level that you and I, as shamanic adventurers, get to go explore in, and it's almost as if we're mapping the way into this for a lot of other people so that we can
Right.
succeed in bringing the entire human species up into this new level of awareness, the fifth dimensional level of awareness, if you will. And that's a real serious thing. I mean, that's a very, very serious project because I don't want to have to come back as a praying mantis on the planet of Jupiter and have to do this kind of samsara, endless suffering game for an extra 100,000 lifetimes because there's no humans to take the rich road, that road through this process, which has got such an astonishing wealth of experience and consequence that we can get through all of these processes a lot faster and generally grow into spiritual adulthood. I'm going to say easier, even though it's the easier way is the hardest because you have to go through so many different changes so rapidly in order to get to it. Am I making any sense here?
Yeah. I'm gonna take a little bit of issue with that, only in that we talked about this before about you and I. We when I wake up in the morning, which is like usually about 4:30, 5 o'clock, I'll spend about an hour,
Mm-hmm.
maybe hour and a half, uh, right in that world between awake and asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like in the crack between the worlds or fourth
Yeah.
dimension. And so I will use that time to manage my energy, and I do that with intent. I will express an intent,
Mm-hmm.
and Usually that's I'm calling in God or I'm calling in Jesus or I'm calling in my guides or I'll pick one of these spiritual beings or masters or whatever, and
Uh-huh.
invite them into my my soul, my spirit,
Yes.
and I open myself up to that possibility.
Hmm.
But the thing, and so I think that that's if you're gonna like if we're gonna give people a real simple exercise to do to become part of this group,
Hmm.
and get out of this thing,
Hmm.
that would be it. But the thing they have to understand is that it's very similar to learning how to run. When I first started running a long time ago,
Yeah, me too.
when I was living, mainly when I was living out in California,
Uh-huh.
is I, the beginning to be like, oh my God, this is insane. What am I thinking? And I had to go through emotional, mental, spiritual, physical. I mean, I had to go through that whole dynamic
Hmm.
and all of the stuff that was there to convince me that you don't need to run, man. You don't need, you're killing yourself. What are you thinking? It would keep coming up, it keep coming up until I decided, you know, I'm just going to not pay attention to that anymore,
Hmm.
And so when I got past that, then I went from shuffling or jogging or whatever to actually running. And my every time I did that, my level would continue to increase
Hmm.
to where, I'd get to where it was a breeze. I mean,
Hmm.
I would literally, I lived in Sausalito, and every morning I would get up and run across the Golden Gate Bridge and back, and
Hmm.
it was just one of the greatest experiences ever. I mean, it was just mind-boggling.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if you're going to, I mean, you and I chose a shamanic path, and we went through gateway ceremonies, and you went down to Peru, and I
Mm.
went down to Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
I mean to Palenque, and so we've gone through the massive amount of indoctrination,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
the thing that really, I think I can remember very clearly that, well, not that clearly, but I was someplace and I remember I was doing some shamanic ceremony and I thought, I love this, but this is really not going to be everybody's cup of tea, I
Yeah.
mean, everybody's not going to be up for, you know, dancing with a rattlesnake or anything. I mean,
Right,
it's just
right.
not going to be real popular,
Hmm.
and uh, and that's really kind of projected me into the Melchizedek sector of my life, and
Hmm.
because when that question came up, I was like, well, so what am I supposed to do? And I heard, well, you need to go back and research the root of Christianity. And
Hmm.
I was like, well, that's weird. That's what kind of took me on that path or on this path. So what I would say to the people that the thing to do is and I guess the issue with what I'm going to take with what you're saying because I mean I agree with what you're saying, but I think a lot of what you're talking about is the indoctrination of this group over here that says you can't do that. You can't do that. You've got to come through us. You've got to go through this particular, you've got to do what we tell you to do. If you're going to be in this group where you're going to find your own space, the simplest exercise I can give to people is wake up early, open yourself up, call in the creator, call in Jesus, whoever you want, but ask it to come to you and be willing to be patient and wait for that merging, that alchemy to arrive because it's not going to happen overnight.
Uh-huh.
It's just not. And so I mean that if I was going to give somebody who's listening to this podcast a simple exercise, that would be it. Now is that going to create, is that going to create the, are you going to become the Christ light through that? I have no idea. Probably not, but maybe you will. I mean, I'm sure every individual is different, and each individual is going to experience that on a different level. But instead of me sitting here saying, well, you've got to go. You got to go through this breathing exercises. You got to go through this. You got to go through that. On and on. I think the environment is going to be changing And I think this is part of the great shift. I think the environment is going to be changing to such a degree that if people will open themselves up to receive, they'll get it. I mean, that's a big projection that I'm putting out there. But I just my sense is that as the environment changes, more and more people are going to be able to have access to what we're talking about.
I completely
A
agree
lot easier.
with that. The only thing
Do you?
I'm confused about why you think I wasn't just saying that exact same thing, but that really doesn't matter right now. It was just two different ways of saying the same thing. I'm not trying to say that people have to do anything specific. And I totally agree. I do what you do. And I totally agree that the first thing in the morning is I make that connection. I make a connection to the planet that I'm on, to the sky that I'm under, to and how the creator goes through all of that. All of that is an
Well,
expression of
describe that. Let everybody tell everybody exactly what you do because that's a good little ceremony.
oh, I really love this ceremony. So what my morning ceremony, and this is after I've spent a couple hours in that half dream state that you're talking about.
Right.
And for me,
Right.
unfortunately, that often has a lot to do with still trying to process a few things to get them so that I understand things. Um, and then what I do is I take my first cup of coffee and I go out into the backyard barefooted and I stand in the grass and I earth myself. And I bring my consciousness, my head consciousness, which is the one that I'm normally using, down and I combine it with my heart consciousness, which I consider to be the the original soul flame that still resides within the center of my being. And I bring those two things together and I sort of meld them together. And then that dual energy of head and heart, I send down into the earth. I go down all the way through the earth in my consciousness, grounding myself and bringing a grounding cable, my grounding cable, all the way down to the center of the earth where I anchor myself, ground myself to the center of the earth. Then I bring myself all the way back up in my consciousness and I go out to what you might call my source star energy. And I bring all that down into the top of my head. Then I make myself into this guitar string or piano string that is now taut and vibrating to the vibration of the planet and the stars and the galaxy and the creator, all the way up the line and all the way down to the bottom of the planet. Then I pour a little coffee on the ground as an offering for my first sip of the day and take that first sip. And I like to roll that around in my mouth and cherish it and thank the entire universe for the experience of being here. My dog
Yeah. See, I
helps.
think
She comes out every
what?
morning, and my dog
Right.
comes out every morning and sits right next to me while I do this. Sometimes she's like, "Aren't you done yet?" and gets up and walks out. She's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of what our task here is I'm not really when I say I'm taking issue with it, I'm not taking issue with it in terms of I disagree with it. What I'm saying is that I think that we need to try to convey to people something simple that
Yeah, I
they
agree.
can try. If they never even, I
Yeah.
mean, you and I, we can sit here and talk above our head till the cows come home,
Hmm.
because we got a lot to talk about. We have a lot of experiences, but, a lot of people would listen to that and think, what the hell are they talking about? You know,
Yeah.
and I've had that a lot of time. I remember when I was teaching, there was more than once where, I'd feel a tug on my trousers, and my girlfriend looked at me and says, "Nobody knows what you're talking about." That's, oh, really?
Oh,
Okay.
dang.
So, Yeah, we kind of have to boil, we need to bring it down to some simple measures that people can hear and apply themselves,
Mhm,
so that they start feeling something happening, and
mhm.
because if you can't feel it, you can't get it, I mean,
That's
and I don't
right.
know how many times I've heard people say, well, I don't believe in God because he doesn't ever appear. Well, you're not opening yourself up to the experience, dude. You
Right.
have to open the door.
You've got to
I mean, you can't.
listen.
I'm going to go up and sit at a Dairy Queen, wait for him to show up. I mean, it's not going to happen. You know.
No, you're
So,
right. And I like where you're going with this because really it's essentially there are a bunch of different ways to bring your situational awareness onto yourself and where you are. Mateo, one of my favorite ceremonialists, he just says, just sit where you are and be very quiet, and then listen for the farthest sound that you can hear. And that process puts you where you are, and it puts you in the planet, and it puts you connected with all of nature and everything out there. The same thing you're
that's
just
great.
talking about. It's just a little thing, but if you let yourself feel the spirit of the creator, especially easily done through nature, that's the least you can do and the biggest thing you can do.
Absolutely, totally agree with you. And I think that's, our background is, of course, heavily colored by our integration with Grandmother Earth,
Mhm, mhm.
and and our experiences with her as a conscious being. Um, the I guess that was probably what really opened me up to what I'm talking about with the Creator. My first experience would be feeling the embrace of Grandmother Earth, because
Yes.
it was a mother energy, and it was loving, and it was unconditional love, and it was like, wow,
Right.
where's this coming from,
Wasn't
and
it beautiful?
oh God, just like a being somebody putting a warm Indian blanket around you and
Hmm.
holding you, I mean,
Yeah.
and of course I was out, I don't know, out in the middle of the desert someplace or some doing something, but when you make that connection, and Grandmother Earth and the universe starts, if you'll do that, then the universe and Grandmother Earth will reply. They will
Hmm.
respond. But you
Hmm.
got to start it. You got to
Yeah.
prime the pump. You got to step out and say, "Hey, I'm ready. Bring
I'm
it on.
listening.
I'm listening.
Hmm.
I'm open to you. Let's see what this can do,
Yep.
because it's without that, it's just not going to happen, and it's
Yeah.
not. And that's what this group wants you to do.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, he's right. It's not going to happen. Why don't you just listen to us?
Right.
Because they're gaslighting us. They've been
They are.
gaslighting us for thousands of years, man.
Yeah. Yep.
Thousands of years. I mean, it's just crazy when you start realizing, man, I don't know who cooked this bullshit up, but it's amazing, what they've done. Oh my God.
Yep.
So anyway, so we're coming, I guess, to the close of this, right?
We sure are. We're just a little over. So let's finish this up in the next session because this is rich and I'm loving this. Okay. Uh, I'll see you in the next session, Mr. Stronghorse, my good friend. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this interesting discussion that we've been having here today. I love it when we don't ever clash heads, but when we have to like go, wait, what? That
Right, right,
makes it
right,
for
right.
an interesting discussion. I'm really
Oh,
happy that this has happened. So,
oh,
uh,
like we
let's
always
see.
say,
Yep,
only the
only the
Great
Great
Spirit is
Spirit
perfect.
is perfect. Okay, thank you, everyone. Come and visit us at
Thank you.
earthems.org.
Oh.